So today, as I said, is a double Shabbat, a very high Shabbat Hagadol, the first day of Pesach. And I entitled the message, The True Meaning of Pesach. I'd like us for one moment to forget everything we think we know about Pesach and allow ourselves to see another perspective. Imagine that night. The people were all in their homes, whether they were Israelite or non-Israelite, whether they were slave or free, rich or poor. They were waiting in trepidation for an event that would change not only their lives forever, but also the lives of their captors. Each household had to take from its flock of sheep or goats 1-year-old male, a lamb or a kid, without blemish, to slaughter it and to place some of the blood on the doorposts and on the lintels, the sides of the door and the top, so that when the angel of death would not kill the firstborn male inside their homes, including a firstborn male animal. Now note that no one in the house with the markings of the blood were told to first ask to be forgiven for their sins. That idea is pure theology. Could the animals have asked for forgiveness for their sins? What the people knew was they had to be obedient. Those who disobeyed the command to put the blood on the doorpost would watch as their firstborn males, human or animal, died before their very eyes. There is a high cost for our disobedience. The Creator told us that Nisan would be the first month of the year for us. This is our Happy New Year. So Happy New Year, everyone. Yet what did our sages do? They replaced it for the first of Tishrei and called it Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the year. This is like telling the Borei Olam that they, our rabbis, our sages, have more authority than he does. Then they added an additional 2 more New Year's days. The 15th of Shvat, called Tu B'Shvat, the New Year for the trees, and the 1st of Elul, the New Year for cattle. Pure theology. God told us simply, do not eat any leaven. That's it. Yet ask any Orthodox Jew today, how many foods are prohibited? How many sets of dishes are needed? How clean do our houses need to be? Is that what God is asking us? Or is it simply more theology? However, our people are not the only ones. Christian theologians have changed the entire Pesach message. They created a new holiday called Easter, taken from Ishtar, the goddess of fertility, from where we get the rabbits and the eggs. They also teach that this holiday is about the death and resurrection of their God, who saves people from their sins. The Torah clearly states, do not add and do not take away from my words. Yet that is exactly what has been done. And in so doing, you and I are being enticed to forget him, to replace him, and to make other gods. Every single plague that hit the Egyptians up to that moment were to execute judgment upon the gods of Egypt. The first 9 can easily be explained according to the laws of science, except the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn male. This one could only have been by the hand of our God. It's a result of midah keneged midah, measure for measure. This same Pharaoh, who had ordered the death of all the newborn males in Israel, would lose his own firstborn son. The principle here is that we get what we give. Today's enemies of Israel would do well to remember that. I often refer to this story as a prototype, an archetypal pattern, a blueprint that helps us see God's plan for mankind throughout history. Any engineer or architect understands the need for clear and well-written designs before any structure can be built. The story of Pesach is such a design. It forms the foundation of a people who would be the emissaries to carry God's 10 Commandments, His pattern by which the world can live in harmony. We don't need to reenact the first Pesach. We just need to remember it. We don't need a new set of commandments, a so-called new covenant. We need only to know the ones He already gave us, and we need to obey them. We don't need other gods. We need to remember that the God who took us out of slavery, out of Egypt, is the one and only ever-present God. The story is so important, the story of Pesach is so important that it's included in the very first commandment. I am the Lord who brought you out of the house of Egypt, out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And Pesach shows us that we can trust Him because we have 3,500 years of history to prove it. The Israelites were literally thrown out of their homes, out of that land, paid to leave by a defeated people who had taken advantage of them, abused them, and saw them as being inferior in every way. Does that sound familiar, even in our most recent history? How many times have Jews been thrown out of their homes, out of their lands, without being paid to leave, or not even being allowed to leave? Those who left Egypt within the last 100 years left without a penny, and those who were in Germany could not even leave. The story of Pesach is to warn future generations to not fall into the same trap as the ancient Israelites did in Egypt by wanting to be accepted by their captors. When we want to be accepted by the people around us, by the non-Israelites, by the people who do not believe in God, and when we start looking to their gods, we fall into a trap. But we continue to fall into this trap and have repeatedly done so year after year, century after century. I remember our Rabbi, telling us that the Jews in Spain, the Sephardic Jews, before the Inquisition, sang praises about their country. When they compared it to Jerusalem. The majority of Jews of Europe forgot Jerusalem and our God before Hitler murdered 6 million of our people. Today, the majority of Jews in North America think of the U.S. and Canada, maybe not so much Canada, but the U.S. as the best country in the world. And guess what? Anti-Semitism is on the rise again. I recently listened to a message from a rabbi in the United States saying that the honeymoon for the Jews of America is over. And I believe it's because we have forgotten what was written in the verses in Deuteronomy 8:11-20. I'll quote just a few of them, but you can read it later. Deuteronomy 8:11-20. Be careful not to forget the Lord your God by failing to keep His commandments, chukim, and mishpatim. These are the 10 Commandments, which I'm giving you today. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses in which you dwell, when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart will be lifted up, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand has given me this wealth. And it shall be, if you shall forget the Lord your God, and walk after other gods and serve them and worship them, I forewarn you this day, you shall surely perish. The dictators of the world today, whether they rule overtly or covertly, consider themselves to be gods, and they think that they know what is best for humanity. They believe that they can speak for us, and like Pharaoh, are devising plans to enslave the masses. The plagues that hit both the people and the land of Egypt are hitting our planet today. But not because of global warming or environmental issues, but because of greed. Man has grown fat, prosperous, and has forgotten the commandments of our Creator. If the Israelites had not been taken out of Egypt then and there, the God of their forefathers would have disappeared from their lives, and the gods of Egypt would have been fully integrated. Let's not think that you and I are so very different. I, for one, know how attractive the gods of the world can be, and they take on many forms, and they know how to entice us. They fill us with half-truths, and they lead us down empty paths, which are dead ends. When will we ever learn? The Israelites would have preferred to stay where they were in Egypt, because what we know is always more comfortable than the unknown. We do not like to be moved out of our comfort zones. Our Rabbi would often quote Psalm 139, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there is any wicked way within me, and lead me into the way everlasting." How often, really, how often do you and I stop from our crazy, busy lives and quietly ask Him to search our hearts? He is asking us to do that at Pesach. We can search for the leaven in our homes, but what is more important is for us to search for the leaven in our temporary dwellings, these bodies, these minds. What are we so afraid to give up? What are we so afraid to lose? What are we afraid to do because we think we can't? What are we so proud of? What thoughts make it hard for us to breathe, to sleep, to work, to perform our calling? And each of us has a calling. The message of Pesach is about trust and obedience. Most of us have fears, we have doubts, we have trust issues. It takes a leap of faith to take a step into the unknown, but that's how trust is developed. It began for the Israelites when they obeyed and put the blood on the doorposts. Then they watched God go to work. They witnessed their own helplessness as the world around them was crumbling. It was a humbling experience to know what it took to set them free. Once again, the world seems to be crumbling around us. And so let us remember the verse in Exodus 12:42. This was a night when the Lord kept vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. And this same night continues to be a night when the Lord keeps vigil for all the people of Israel throughout their generations. As we sat at our Seder last night, He was with us. He was there, as He is with us today on this beautiful Shabbat Hagadol. How much more do we need to know than Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Israel, He who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. You and I are Israel, and He keeps watch over us whether we feel it or not. None of us know what tomorrow holds for us. We've experienced much loss over these past few years, every one of us. But despite what we have lost, we have so much more than most people in the world because we have the love and the protection of our Creator. So with that, I wish us all a Chag Pesach Sameach.